And I think recruiting at every level.
I don't know why it's not working. Oh, Lordy. Well, anyway, welcome everybody to another This, That, and the Other. This is an Out of Cycle show. It's a special show requested by Adam to discuss some of the patches and updates and some of the concerns and the ire of some of the folks out there and some of the feather ruffling, if you will. So let's get Adam on real quick here. Adam, join the stream. Are you there, brother?
I am here. How you doing?
Man, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
What is going on?
I wonder if they can hear me.
Me.
My mic's showing up, so I apologize for my messy. I apologize for my messy background. I'm like still halfway through a move, so it happens.
Sweat it, man. We're all busy. It's the real world.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing an out of cycle this, that, and the other for me. I don't know if we have anyone else here, but I did want to hop on after missing, and I am sorry that originally I did commit to you that I was going to be here, and then I ended up being on the interstate for about 8 hours on Thursday and 8 hours on Friday. So I am sorry as well. And I also, just for an FYI for people, that I actually talked to Daryl for about an hour yesterday. So I think we had a pretty good conversation. I don't know if he's here tonight, but he said he was going to try and hop on. But I think that, he voiced some concerns, and, I think talking through some of those, and, I had a chance to listen to the podcast, and, I think some of the critiques are fair. I think, some of my statements that I made on the boards also are kind of how I feel as well. And, one of the things I said to Daryl is, we can try and do better. But so I don't know if we have anyone on, do we? Or
yeah, we've got Bob is watching. Bob Hazelwood, he's watching. He's not.
How's it going, Bob?
Coming on. He'll let me know when he's ready. And katzphang,
cool.
He's on, and we'll bring him on so I can talk trash about kicking his ass later tonight when we match up in one of our games.
And I guess I think the first thing I want to talk about is some good news. So I've seen a couple of the posts that say, Adam's obsessed with new players. Adam's obsessed with, bringing people in or making the game dumbing the game down. And so I think I kind of want to touch there first. And so the first thing I want to talk about is what new players mean. So since Chris and I have gotten here, the game has grown by 20% revenue.
Nice.
What that has enabled me to do, and something that I got permission on Tuesday from my leadership, is that we're going to be hiring another developer. The reason that's important is because Chris and I spend about half of our time making sure the game doesn't collapse on itself. It means that the updates that we've talked about, the rewrite of this game is not nearly as far along as we'd want it to be. It means that these patches aren't as big or as impactful as we'd want to be. And it's something that for me, I think was important to get someone else in here who is the skill set's going to be a little bit more on the older code, because we can go into the engine, but I don't with any confidence. And I'm not a developer. Like, that's the other thing too, maybe that sometimes gets mixed around, is that like I have some development experience from 5-10 years ago in my career, but I don't have any level of confidence to go in besides maybe run some SQL, some database stored procedures or some scripts and keep the ship from sinking. So really a lot of this falls on Chris's shoulders. And, some of the feedback, I'm never going to get hurt by someone critiquing my decisions and how I go about doing things, but I'm very defensive of Chris. And because I don't think that we have anything without Chris. And, some of the critiques I think are fair towards me, and I'm never going to sit there and turn my nose up at them. But, Chris is working in a very, very old code base that is consistently trying to blow itself up. We have 20 or 30 jobs that are supposed to run on a weekly or daily, weekly, or monthly basis that fail on a regular basis. And if they don't, that's when your site gets really slow, when you start spinning. So we're consistently getting emails from the site that are either red herrings and false, and we have to go check on them. Or when we're not doing things to keep the game from collapsing on itself, we are answering customer support tickets. Something that I've really tried to do a better job with the current player base with, because frankly, being someone who's been on the site since, even 2016 isn't that long on What If Sports. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that during the period of time, the customer support wasn't very good. And I don't mean that to talk negatively about people. It's just, it's a focus that I've really tried to put on. And we have the metrics to show that, our first response and our closure of tickets are, basically hours upon hours faster. Our satisfaction rates are up from the mid 80s up into the 90s. So it's not that developing these games isn't important, but also that we need to make sure that we are trying to take care of you guys. And I think that's one of the things that why I wanted to hop on and clarify that the veteran players, and maybe veteran isn't the right word. I think maybe the right word is current players, because I don't necessarily like splitting my necessary comment into veteran or non-veteran, because, Daryl read a statement that I said, and the context for it was that, you got to give the veteran players a heads up when you do this stuff, because we're the ones keeping the game alive. And my comment basically was along the lines of, the veteran players are slowly killing the game. And I'd like to clarify that, because it is partially true. And it's not every veteran player. But when you go to the boards and you see people defending, these exploits and these loopholes, and they've always been in the game, it's what I was talking about in my post before that it's a culture thing, is that if we don't build a culture of gridiron players that want a game where the rules are on the table, and I understand Daryl's argument around it's always been this way. And I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to seek and change that we could all operate in the same rules. And I don't think that, and to talk about the, I'm a little all over the place, but to talk about the notice that wasn't given, I personally didn't think the impact was that big. And I don't think that the impact people were, raising their torches and pitchforks at me. I think there were a handful of people that were impacted much more severely than other people. I think that there was a handful of people that made big signings, but I also felt like I gave you guys a workaround for that wasn't going to be impactful for your teams. It was basically going to result in no work ethic drop, and it was also going to just basically take away their redshirt year. And now I know some people said that you guys try to recruit and redshirt a running back and a quarterback every year, so it might render that recruit useless if you have a redshirted freshman coming in. I get that, but we're all talking fringe cases at this point, and that's why, for me, I didn't think the change was that great. And so for me, I just didn't think notifying was going to necessarily give you guys, shake everything up or blow everything up. And I also don't think that this change is magically going to be the thing that makes new players beat veteran players. But my point about the 100-0 is that what's the difference between top schools beating someone, 54-10 or 38-14 in a playoff game because you've out game planned them. And this change really is going to shift the meta of this game more towards game planning, because you're not going to have, everyone with a redshirted quarterback or a redshirted running back, and it's going to make it more strategic. If anything, I feel like the game skill cap and the knowledge that you guys have as veteran coaches is magnified greater in this newer system, but you're not going to have the advantage of a better roster with redshirt quarterbacks to also topple onto your advantage of, being able to game plan.
Having a stacked roster and being able to game plan.
Yeah, I think that's the point that I'm really trying to, talk about, is I don't think this is the magic poison pill that's just going to, I don't think it's dumbing the game down. I feel like there's more nuance in your game planning now. It's going to have to be done. I think that you're not going to be able just to win on roster, quality as much anymore, because you're not going to have as much of that there. And I understand their critiques that, I'm a newer player, but it doesn't take a veteran player to look at this situation and point to it and say, wait, you can promise 75% of snaps and just redshirt the player and you don't have to play them. I don't know why someone didn't come to me and say, yo, this is broken. We have people complaining to me about, other stuff that, they feel is broken, but that feels just you don't have to be a player of the game. You could tell anyone off the street, they promised this guy a star, they promised this guy, playtime, and you have to honor. And I did the same thing in Hoops Dynasty with ineligible players, is that you could promise ineligible players anything. And the minute they rolled out of their ineligible season, it would just wipe it clear. And there was some complaining over there as well, but it didn't feel like the same, backlash, come with me to torches it did over here. So, and I realize it's not a large group of players. A large group of players in the sense that, like, I know you guys have a lot of seasons and you made that clear to me on the boards. But, the thing is I'm really trying not to be a jerk about these things. And what I will say here, and I thought my post is pretty clear, is that we're coming for the other ones. And the next one we're coming for is the Renew Your Team one. So I guess this is my warning to you guys right now. If you are renewing your team every year in that little window, that's the next one we're coming for. I don't know when it's coming because our QA environment is a disaster. And so we have to wait. Chris might program it tomorrow, and then I have to go and look at what worlds in QA are ready for, coach returns. And if there aren't any ready, I have to then sit there and wait for 2-3 weeks, test it. And then if it fails, I have to go back to Chris and say, hey, it failed in this situation. Then he has to go back and tweak it. And then we're waiting another 2 to 3 weeks again. So so when I get opportunities to put stuff in, I kind of just jump at it. So, first thing I would say is if you were impacted, severely by this, I am sorry. And I understand it was a temporary inconvenience, but it also was a risk that I jumped at to get done. So
right.
That's what I'd like to say to you guys.
Yeah. And, I'm sure a lot of people really appreciate the explanation. Let me say that we've got 4 or 5 people in the waiting room, and we're going to get those on here momentarily, but it's my show, so I'm going to get my turn.
Go for it, man. Your show, you get to control this.
The situation I find myself in wanting to grow What If Sports, just from a user aspect, the more humans we have, the more enjoyable it is. I think everybody will agree with that. And then on the flip side, from the competitive side of me that wants to take advantage of each and every opportunity I can to improve my team. And that includes every aspect, as long as it's not cheating as laid out within the guidelines of What If Sports. I mean, years ago when Jay Conte was rewriting the terms and conditions and all that stuff, he was going knee deep into some rules, and he had a group of us that were helping him identify what parts needed to be thrown out and what parts should stay, what parts needed to be added. At no time do I recall anybody mention anything about loopholes. And I think it was either one of 2 reasons. One, they weren't as widely known, and those on that little committee weren't aware of it. Or 2, they knew about it and just didn't feel like putting the brakes on it. So neither here nor there. I'm not going to cast shade one way or the other. But again, the competitor in me is like, yeah, if there's a loophole and it's not against the rules, take advantage of it. But now the realist in me comes to the table and says, if you're taking advantage of a loophole, or you using something that is not intended to function that way within this game, and the staff puts the brakes on it because it is not a component of the game as normally prescribed by the rules, then don't bitch. It's the bottom line is, if it is not a program part of the game that everybody is aware of, or that is, keen to football, and it gets taken away, don't gripe. Now, if you guys stopped allowing us to pass, by golly, we need to know. But to close a loophole or to correct an issue, again, I think everybody deserves one notice on the boards that say, anytime we're going to find a loophole, anytime that we find something that needs to be corrected that is not part of the rules or doesn't change the actual gameplay based on the common aspect of football, be advised, there is no warning. It'll be fixed and it'll be implemented. And if you don't like it, tough. And if you can't handle that as a player, man, I don't know what to say, brother. I mean, let's wake up and be real about this,
So I'm not going to hide. So what I'll tell you is that actually that's in the fair play guidelines. It's been posted on the boards a couple times.
Yep.
I'm not going to hide behind that. I had no idea that was even in there, so I'm not going to sit there and, when people came to my defense to a certain extent and said, this is in the rules, it was, this way all along. I was never going to be like, hey, I totally knew that, and lie to you guys about that. Because I'll be honest, when we made that change, I didn't know that was in there.
Right.
It seems like now I reserve that right, but I'm also trying to be understanding that there are people pay money to play this games, and what I'm saying now is like I don't know when, and this I guess is like and I feel like I've said this before on this podcast, is we're coming for those loopholes because I don't think it's not about knowledge versus non-knowledge. It's about fair play, and like there's been a couple of people, and I know Bob said something about it on the boards where it basically is like, this is not going to cost you guys championships from these new players. These new players are not going to beat you unless they invest the time in it. But what it's going to do is it's going to give them a footing to understand what they're trying to do in these games instead of having to site mail a veteran coach or go to the forums. And it's something that I told Daryl is people don't go to forums to learn the basics of games. They go to forums still these days to learn the nuances. I mean, there's plenty of gaming communities that have forums on Reddit and all these other social media sites that's how you learn how to play the game at a more nuanced level. But the basics need to be baked in and they need to be intuitive in the game. And that's where I struggle with some of these. And and even though it's under the heading cheating, I have not called anyone in this situation a cheater. I've used the word exploiters. I've used the words loopholes, loophole people. You can say those are synonyms, but the truth of the matter is that if this is blatant cheating, there would have been punishments. And I don't feel like it is. I just think that, as a gridiron community, I'm kind of asking you guys, like, let's just get these things out in the open. And I think that thread did a pretty good job of that. But I think that there's probably still more that people cling to. But I've also gotten complaints about coaches where they claim that someone has to be cheating because they, make a million players green, and, we go and investigate. And honestly, they just, I'll be honest, they know more about recruiting. They know more about recruiting than other people. And like, that's not cheating. That's the knowledge you guys have held and kept. And so, I envision this is going to probably result, after all these kind of get closed out, is this is probably going to result in less promises. But it also means that your promises are going to be used a lot more strategic, or there might still be promises, or just might be less, less redshirting, I guess, is maybe for quarterbacks and, running backs. I mean, those are already probably the most sought after in competitive positions already. So it probably means that you're probably looking at the same thing again. You're probably going to be not running out a redshirt quarterback every year. And it might mean that, like, in a year where you have the ability to make a promise because maybe your team's down a little bit, maybe you really want to go after that top quarterback, and you can make that promise and make that decision and choose that risk and, run the ball 80 to 90% of the time that year and take a few licks, but know that, like, you've nabbed the number one quarterback in the nation, and then in 2 or 3 years you're going to be, humming along. But these are still situations that are for senior coaches. This is not something that someone like me is going to be able to. I mean, the recruiting aspect of it, I feel like I'm grasping recruiting. The game planning, I'm grasping some of the D3 principles, but when you go up to the next level of game planning, I haven't even scraped the surface of that. And so, that's why I'm not going to sit here and, say, hey, this is all for new people. And, it's not. I mean, if anything, I feel like the talent gap is going to be, if you don't know how to game plan at this point and you've been depending upon, roster advantages, you're probably going to get exposed a little bit in this one.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
We'll see.
Yeah, that exposure is coming. Well, we do have some guests on. Let me go ahead and bring Katzphang on and get him added to the stream.
Cool.
I'm sure he's either got a question for you or he's going to trash talk me about our upcoming game, one or the other.
Or both.
Or both, yeah. Katzphang, how are you, sir?
Aloha. Doing well.
Aloha.
How's it going, Katzphang?
Rainy afternoon. How are you, Adam?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Had a rainy afternoon, and I was at the computer, so.
Cool.
Excuse me?
I said cool. So you said aloha. Are you out in Hawaii?
We're in Hawaii.
Cool. That's awesome.
So if if I break up a little bit on my comments or my picture, I apologize. We live very rural in Hawaii.
That's awesome.
Which
gorgeous.
island are you on?
I really didn't log on to ask any specific questions. Just kind of be here with the chat and find out what's going on. And if I have a comment, I guess I can interject.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I know that there's been a few of the players that play on the Texas team that have volunteered to come play for my New Mexico Highlands team tonight. So I imagine that there's going to be some magic happening in that game.
Do I need to have Chris take some of Magic's guys and put them on your squad?
Oh my God! No, I need more.
No,
that team is pitiful.
Well, most of the guys on my team still have their mom make their lunch, so I don't think you're going to have too much trouble.
Well, most of the guys on my team, their mom still has their lunch.
Oh, it is a little ironic because Humboldt is one of my alma maters, and they actually don't have a football team anymore. So
no, they don't.
It's
yeah, and that's one of the unique situations, that we encounter is that, and Adam and I have talked quite a bit about this, is the reality of what if sports in comparison to the way the schools are laid out now in the divisions and conferences, et cetera, and bringing that more in line with the way it is today. And I've always had that question, will the non-football schools disappear if we do that? Adam, what are your thoughts? Putting you on the spot a little bit.
No, I think it's a fair point. We're in kind of a, mixed reality, I guess is what I'd call it. So, it really kind of, for me, depends. For us to go through and knock schools out, it seems kind of a little messed up, but I also know that there's, cries for more reality. So, when you talk about the rewrite of a game, Chris and I have discussed like a hardcore world where you're talking about like injuries, mirrors reality, because in this new world, we're not going to have worlds that match each other all identically or, are exactly the same no matter what. And that was part of what happened in this patch is that, there were a handful of worlds that got impacted because we can't version the worlds out. And I tried to explain on the boards. I don't know if I did a good job of it, but essentially we can't just push. I would love to version these worlds out. I'd love to roll all of your updates and all of your changes in between seasons. That's my dream situation, because that's the most fair situation, that you don't have to stab someone in the back during the recruiting process, or, if we ever did make a game engine balance change, doing that to someone during conference play versus exhibition season also is, messed up too. It's one of the reasons why we kind of don't want to necessarily balance the game as much right now and trying to deal with some of this stuff and just closing some loopholes and that kind of stuff before we tromp really hard down this path. So, and then talking about just real colleges in general, one of the things that's halted our development of this new gridiron is licensing. And
sure,
you and I talked about this briefly, Magic, and I think I talked briefly about this with Daryl yesterday, is that I've had multiple conversations as lawyers because the EA agreement actually impacted our work as well, because EA signed an exclusive agreement. So what that means is we're probably looking more at we might be transitioning to more of a rewrite the game in place as it is with some updates and quality of life things, rather than importing. Like we had a mock-up ready to go of a mobile app that had Ohio State's logos in it, Michigan's logos in it. But if we do that now, my fear is that we spend 9 to 12 months on this and we then have to burn the whole thing to the ground because the NCAA hands us a cease and desist, and, we then have to go back to the drawing board. So we'd rather, before we tromp any further down that, decide the direction we're going to go. And it doesn't mean there isn't going to still be a mobile app to that kind of stuff, but it just means that we have to examine how close we can mirror to reality, because if we get too close, I think we run the risk of catching the attention of the NCAA and potentially burning the game to the ground. Because at this point, it'd be a hard case, because there's other games that do this, like the Wolverine Studios guys. they kind of do the dotted line approach by changing the names of the schools, like
Right. Yeah.
and their mascot. So it's like there's ways to kind of like try and float under the radar, but it doesn't mean it's probably, you know, like I don't know. If we got handed a cease and desist letter, it'd be an interesting legal battle with the NCAA. I'm not trying to like, you know, flame that, but it's just like it's the reality of the situation.
Now, Katzphang, you're not an attorney by any chance, are you?
No.
I thought maybe we could help Adam out.
No,
we have lawyers. That's who we're working with on it. Yeah.
I do not give legal advice.
I hear you. Have you got anything for else for Adam? If not, I'll put you back in the waiting room and get one of the other guys on.
I think I kind of summed it up as kind of some of the feelings that I had with that last post I had under the this, that, and the other post is that, you know, it's a rare opportunity for the people in the community here to actually be able to talk to the developers as they're making the game and drag along some of our past history. I was around when it was all running, and then it went to all passing, and so basically 1.0, 2.0, 2 point whatever number you had, and then 3, and now hopefully a 4. So I think the main thing is that if they listen to what's being said with a grain of salt and give us a little bit of what's going on as it's going on, so that some of the transitions were awfully bloody in this game, and if it happens that something can be diverted prior to the game going live, that will keep everyone happy, I think ultimately the game will be a success.
All right. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's see, Bob, do you have anything, or are you still watching? You want to come on? All right. We're going to bring Bob on, and we're going to move Katzphang down.
How's it going, Bob?
Good. How's you guys doing today?
It's been about a month or two since we chatted. How you doing?
Been a while, yeah. Hey, I just wanted to say a couple of quick things. First of all, the excuse that it's always been that way is the absolute worst reason to not do something. I mean, there is no worse reason in the world to not do something than it's always been that way. I mean, I'm sorry. Things change.
I agree.
Things evolve. I also think that there's a lot of folks who don't seem to understand the difference between making the game easier and making the game easier to learn and play. And the game has a terrifically steep learning curve. Nearly everyone that's been around for some period of time, if not everyone, has had some mentor reach out to them and help them along the way. There's nobody that can sit down and walk into this game and learn to play it really well by themselves.
No.
I mean,
not immediately, anyway.
I know, certainly not immediately. And no one wants to suffer through years of mediocre and poor performance just to learn the tricks or how to do a game plan properly. I mean, and I know you guys are working on tutorials, things like that, but I hear folks complaining about, well, they're making the game dumber. Well, I don't think it's making the game dumber to close loopholes. It's not making the game dumber to make it easier for a new person to come into the game. And no one's expecting them to come in and win a national championship. Hell, I've been playing way longer than I care to admit, and I've never won a national championship. I've got like one appearance in a national championship game ever. So, you know, I'm never going to be enlisted in the top coaches for anything, but I did want to mention, of course, the terms of service, the fair play thing. You know, people do overlook that there really are rules in place that say loopholes are going to be closed, and they're going to be closed as soon as we find them. And you're SOL if you depend on those loopholes.
And you know, I generally agree with you, Bob. And I think that, you know, my statements initially are there as well. I also think that, you know, one of the things that I said to Daryl is it does break my heart as your product owner. And as, you know, I'm going to say a member of this community because I've been on the site since 2016, is that you guys do feel like that I'm out, that some of the veteran coaches feel like I'm out to either get them or that I wasn't transparent with them. And for me, it does break my heart to hear that, because, what's the saddest thing to me is that you guys have forked over your money to this game for the last, 6 years or whatever before Chris and I showed up with no changes to your game, and that you guys have still been loyal to the site. And I don't think that's fair either. And so, like, when they say things have always been this way, I understand the argument that, like, when I say it's a culture change, is that I really want to get away from the, like, these are my loopholes and I've, it's my knowledge versus it being a loophole. I'd like to get back to the point where we can start having, open conversations, close these things out. If there's more of them that I don't know about, because, the big three that I have right now are the one that we just closed, the renewing your team and the, basically the play time where you just don't put them in. If there's more, I'd love to hear them, because like you said, we're not trying to make the game dumber. And I think that like I said earlier, I think this change is going to put a lot more emphasis on game planning. I don't think that you're going to have I think recruiting is going to be harder for people in general. I think, you're going to be able, some of the, because what would end up happening is you guys would promise that you guys would have a higher prestige. You'd promise 75% of your plays to a player, and then you'd sign them when a other coach would come after them as well that maybe was newer or mid-range or whatever. And they'd promise to start, they'd promise 75% of the plays. You sign them, and then you just redshirt them. And they're like, well, how did they sign that player and then just redshirt them? And it becomes this isn't about making the game easier. It's about making the game more fair, because when they're making that promise as a new or a rebuilding program, they're actually expecting to play that player. I know that, like, when I did my first season, I was really hands off with promises. I was like, dude, I'm not going to make a promise. I don't want to bury my team because I took over a halfway decent team. But that's the stuff where it's like, I don't think that them signing that quarterback is magically going to make them beat you if you've been playing this game for years and you know how to game plan, you know the ins and outs, you know how to look at their rosters and exploit what they can't do. But I think it's going to make that more important. I think it's going to make it, you might not have these, Teflon teams with no holes. You might actually have to start covering up and game planning and forcing people to, be more strategic in your game planning and in theirs as well. So
right.
I think honestly that once we get these closed out, I think it's going to make the game more fun. I think it's going to make it more dynamic also for the vets. I think that you guys are going to see probably some more parity amongst yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's football. It's not basketball. One player doesn't have as much impact on a team, even at a quarterback or a running back position, doesn't have as much impact on the team as the players that surround them. Without a good offensive line, it doesn't matter how good your running back is. So those are the kind of things that I'm all for. Let's fix the holes. It's not a matter of changing how football works. It's a matter of the simulation is supposed to do this. You're making a promise to a player. In real life, if you had a coach that was breaking promises to players left and right, nobody'd sign with that team. And those players would be leaving every year. They'd be saying, hey, look, you lied to me about starting the first year. Yep. I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to Bob's team because he needs all the help he can get.
Lord have mercy. Bob, we've got Andrew in the wings.
That's it.
As well.
I'm done. Click on ads. Go to the guest reports. Click on the ads. Give me a donation. Please. Pay me some money.
And if you guys don't know who this is, I'm sure you know what about GD Reports. This guy, Bob Hazelwood, is the brainchild of GD Reports. So all those recruiting rankings, etc., that you can find there, this is the guy. So like he said, when you hit the site, make sure to click some ads, drop him some money via PayPal. I'm sure he'd appreciate it, and he provides us a great service.
It's good chatting with you, Bob.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's get Andrew on here. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Well, that was your time. Let's see who's next. No.
Wow, that's harsh. How's it going, Andrew?
Not bad, Adam. How about you?
I'm doing all right.
Cool. Just wanted to jump on Magic, enjoy the show. Been watching. So I'm at got 5 teams now. So I thought it was interesting that we've had a lot of vets who have a lot of teams to kind of have a newbie, because my 3 seasons. This is the farthest I'm along with any of my teams.
Cool.
And so it's been interesting to hear the conversation just back and forth of, at least recently, that the vets were the only ones who had a lot of teams. And so just understanding too, as we've kind of hit this, I'm glad we're closing the loophole, but that obviously as a new person is one that, I didn't know about. And trying to, as you say, recruit against someone who knows that advantage. But also, as I've just kind of looked at it, is kind of like, Adam, you're the NCAA. And all of a sudden we found, some programs who are doing something, and now all of a sudden we're about to get, penalized, or someone's about to get penalized for it. But, those are just the rules, kind of as Majique was saying earlier. And even to look at using the loophole, the most you can use it is 3 players.
Mm.
You can only redshirt three players. So, I'm excited to see it happening. I'm excited to see the changes that y'all are doing, and that you're looking to bring to the game. And, I'm excited to continue to learn all the different nuances, whether it's recruiting or game planning or just any of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I he said the NCAA. I tried to make it, by giving them the other loophole, if they weren't aware of that one, a way to make it hurt a little less. And like you said, it was interesting listening to the conversation last week, and then also reading the boards, because, you have 2 very polarizing sides of the argument, where some people are like, this is a huge impact, it inconvenienced me, ruined everything. And then the other side of like, dude, this is 3 players. Like, how much impact does this have? And like I said, I think there's a handful of fringe cases where there were a few people that got punched pretty good by this thing. It doesn't mean that it's not recoverable. It just means that, it's just how it goes sometimes. And like I said, I'm trying to be a little bit more, I guess, like I'm saying, like coming on here and announcing it, and then also the post that I made that said, hey, like, here's your notice. If you're going to use these, like, we're going to start closing them. I'm hoping that at least as a deterrent, or at least provide some level of acceptance that if you are going to use these, especially since I've now said the next one we're targeting is the renew your team one, that will at least have people stop using that one. But my goal wasn't to rip the don't play your players one out, because I essentially used that one to give you all who were using this loophole a safe out, that basically you were just out a red shirt on those players, rather than having to take a massive work ethic hit or have to play a freshman the whole entire season at one of these important positions and ruin potentially a good team. So, I would be interested in having a conversation with you, Andrew, just around learning the game, because I know, like Bob said, it is miserable. I'm trying to learn it myself, and I'm trying to learn all the games on the site, because I was mostly a Hoops Dynasty player before I came on here. And it's pretty unforgiving. And I know all of our games are. Like, the way I learned how to play Hoops Dynasty is I had 2 mentors, and they told me all of the ways to make good teams. And, what's interesting is that then if I try and make a team that's not within those parameters, I suck again. So, and even in a game like Hoops Dynasty, where I have 3 championships and, like 40 seasons, which isn't great, but isn't horrible. But, it's one of those things that, like, if I try and run a different scheme, I'm not as confident running those schemes as well. So, like, I don't doubt it's similar in Gridiron as well. And, I have a handful of people that, are helping me or providing some insight into recruiting. I haven't jumped a whole lot into game planning yet. Like I said, the D3 stuff is about as deep as I can get in right now, because I'm also trying to learn all the Sim League games and Hardball Dynasty. And man, if you thought Gridiron was nuanced, go play Hardball Dynasty. You have rookie league, low A, high A, double A, triple A, and major league teams that you all have to manage. And it is a doozy.
It's a nightmare.
I only have one of those teams. I have 2 Gridiron. Like, that'll give you an idea of, like, the time commitment that is. So, but the games are fun. And, like, that's the thing. Is, like, I feel like once you learn and get over the learning curve, like, I feel like you get invested in your teams. Like, I think that's the fun part of all of this. And so for me, like, I'd love to know from your perspective, Andrew, and I don't know if you play other games or have tried other games like this. I'd love to know pros and cons of, like, just getting into the game and learning, the basics and building off of that, and see if there's things that we can do to potentially learn from some of the pains you've had to experience.
Yeah. And I think about what Bob was just saying. about how just trying to make it a little easier for someone who's coming in to understand. I have definitely tried to put the time into learning, whether it was reading the boards or, writing other coaches or watching the show. My wife probably gets frustrated with how much time I spend trying to learn all the different things. But, I'm invested in it and I want to learn and be able to do it because it is a game. When I was looking through to find something, truthfully, the recruiting aspect of it was what really drew me to it. So I just wanted to play a game where I could recruit and just have that experience. And then, I was involved. I had one team maybe 8 years ago and didn't even know how to do any of the other stuff. All I knew what to do was to recruit. And so my team was only as good as my recruits were. And now coming back 8 years later, I'm like, wow, there's so much more to this other than getting a good recruiting class. And so, I'm more than willing to have those conversations. And I am also very appreciative of all the veteran coaches who will take the time to talk to you and to learn. Or to kind of teach you that you can learn from them.
And I'm grateful for that too. I'm in the same boat as you, like just, pinging them or asking them a question and just like, well, what do I do here? Or, what would you recommend in this situation? There's been a lot of people who have helped me. I think one of the times I was a 7 seed or whatever in a playoff and I was, talking to, one of the senior coaches just about like, hey, how should I approach this game? That kind of stuff. So it was, it's cool how helpful people are. And it's one of those things I'm trying to figure out a way to make that even like more real time or more interactive than just, a forum or a site mail. I know I talk, and it's because it's the experience I have. The Hoops Dynasty community put up a Discord server, and I'm not sure who's familiar with Discord, but it's essentially just like more of a live messaging with like message boards and chat rooms, and there's voice chats, and it's a little bit more live time. And like we have a lot of people in there, but we also, people that are using the boards, and it's just another avenue to try and learn the game and have conversations about the game. And it's almost like one big group chat with like rooms and channels to post things in a more live time feature. So it's one of those things that I'm trying to see if there's any interest in other communities for that. The Hoops Dynasty team, one of the Hoops Dynasty guys approached me about creating one, and we put a banner up for it on the last patch, and there was now, I think we went from 200 to 500 members in there. So people that just talk about Hoops Dynasty on a regular basis. So it's one of those things that, I think there's some value in it, but it's also like it's community run. So I don't want to put that on you guys or anything like that. But even avenues like this podcast, like Majique saying, having conversations around it helps tremendously too. So, but that's one thing we really have to do. And you guys, I don't really want to be that broken record of like new players, like I get a reputation for, but like there really is a harsh learning curve these games, and getting people up to speed. And I'm not even saying competitive. I'm just saying understanding the basics of what we're trying to accomplish is important because, once you start learning the basics, then you can start going to the boards and actually understanding and digesting, like what the difference is between these, positional rankings that, the Wizard Bob, created that everyone seems to love. Everyone loves so much.
For whatever reason.
They're pretty dang good. I'm not gonna lie. I was actually impressed though, because the ones that GD created are way better than the default ones that Hoops Dynasty gives you. At least like the ones in GD are serviceable. I can use those and like not completely fail. But like if you try and use the ones they give you for Hoops Dynasty, you'll be lucky if you make a tournament. So
when GD first put their ratings in, I think he was a loyal fan, was the developer at the time, and I asked him if he was trying to put me out of business by stealing my code, by stealing my ratings. But there's enough differences, and you know what? Like I've mentioned to you before, there's no such thing as a perfect rating.
Right.
Every player used in different ways, and all that stuff. So I'm just glad that they're competitive.
Adam, if I'm going to just be honest with you. when Andrew mentioned and referenced you to the NCAA, that was not a compliment because NCAA stands for no count ass Adam. So,
That's unfortunate for me.
It's more like the
You know, and I understand the analogy, and I didn't mean for it to be like the hammer coming down. I really was like trying to just have this be like, at some point we got to rip the Band-Aid off. And
no, you're fine.
unfortunately, we had 2 or 3 worlds that just kind of got smacked with it, and I knew the risk going into it, and you know.
Well, it impacted me.
What I would say is look at your schedule, because every one of our patches have been on the second or third Thursday of every month. So it's probably a good indication. Now, with that said, one thing I was going to make an announcement on tomorrow, we're not going to have a patch next month because we've gotten so far behind that we're actually going to skip a rotation of our patches. I'm sorry. I really am. But we got to get caught up. So we're gonna take 1 month off. So because we just don't have time to test anything. So hopefully, and we're also busy with interviews. Hopefully in the near future as well. So that's something I'm really excited about, because that means that Chris can go spread his wings and really start I can throw him in a dark cave and have him develop or something. He's not. So.
Let me throw something out to you that may help some of the newbies, the beginners, when it comes to recruiting. And it's an issue that I found myself doing the first couple recruiting opportunities I had, as well as setting my lineups. And that was, I relied unknowingly at the time strictly on total, that 3-digit total. That is a cumulative sum of all of the cores. And as a newbie, I'm looking at a running back.
Not all the cores. All the stats.
All the stats. Yeah, I'm sorry. All the stats.
Mm-hmm.
So as a newbie, I was false in my impression that a running back with slow speed but high overall was going to be better than a guy with maybe not the greatest total but superb speed and elusiveness. So my thought is, the only thing that I can see that the total is doing for a Gridiron Dynasty is it basically generates the Gridiron Dynasty ranking of players as far as their presumed value. Is there any way to just eliminate that total so we get rid of that eye candy for the newbies and get rid of essentially a worthless column? And I'm going to bring Daryl on since he just popped on.
Awesome.
Bring him into the stream.
How's it going, Daryl?
Excellent. How are you guys?
Good to talk to you again. That's a great point, and it's something that is misleading for everybody. I mean, and there's categories that don't matter with a lick. And I can definitely look at that, or we can even look at, cores that don't matter, taking them out of there as well. But I mean, that's probably not durability is just a nasty one because there's no injury. So
exactly,
why would that be included? But I understand the ask, and I think potentially getting rid of that and just defaulting to position rankings is probably safer, and not sending people on a bunch of red herrings, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. And again, it's simply one little item that can be done, and I don't know how difficult. I'm not going to pretend to know the coding, but it would, like I said, take away some of that eye candy for the new guys who see an astronomical 3-digit number out beside a player when he's actually worthless for his particular position. That's the only thing that I've got as far as right now. Daryl, you were the last one to pop on the show, so I'll give you an opportunity. We've been around the house once or twice here. Give you an opportunity to pose a question to Adam or throw something at him, whatever you want to do.
I told him we had a good conversation yesterday. I hope I wasn't lying.
No, not at all. Yeah, that's why I say I did want to pop on here. We'd been running late. I had some private things to get taken care of, so I'm like, oh crap, what time is it? So we hustled home, but for that. Yeah. No, that's over in a heartbeat. I ain't got any problem with that. But no, yeah, we did have a good talk yesterday with me and Adam and everything, and kind of got stuff straightened out. And like I said, it was basically kind of misunderstandings of the way things were spoken and talked between us and everything. And so yeah, that was really good, and I appreciated him calling and trying to set the record straight. And that's why I told him, I said, you're the first developer I've ever had any kind of personal contact with. So that's always reassuring, because the other ones, didn't even know their real name, didn't know if it was male or female or anything. So, it's definitely headed in the right direction. Kind of, he told us, what was, stuff to look forward to. So, no, I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen and where they can take it. So, I mean, we're all for wanting to make the game better eventually, whatever we can do. And there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, but, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't one of those things where, let's push the old farts out and get some new blood in here and basically take care of them or listen to their needs and bypass everybody else. But he assured me that wasn't the case. So, no, it's all good.
No, and I mean, I even learned, like even through upsetting people, I learned more about things that we need to fix. Like, I mean, someone flat out told me, like in a Slack chat, like, you're going to fix this, but you're not going to fix that we play our bowl mates our conference mates in bowl games and in the conference tournaments early. And it's like, I mean, yeah, we can fix that. I just didn't know. Like, I mean, I'm not like trying to be stupid, but it's just like I don't know if I made it. First off, I haven't even made it to D1 yet, first off, so I don't even know about bowl games. So we'll get there in a decade or so. And then second off, like I just haven't made enough tournaments at this point to see the problem of I think can you play your own person in the first round or that is gross. I'm sorry. Like, so you could play a conference championship game and then play the same guy in the first round.
Yep.
All right. Well, we can look at that for sure then. Interestingly enough, I just made assumptions because in Hoops Dynasty, like you won't play your conference mates until the Sweet 16. So, I mean, we could even potentially look at, what that might mean. I'm just saying the consequence of this is that like there's people that sometimes get left out of the tournament. So it might not mean that always the top 32 teams get into the tournament at that point, because that 32nd spot might have filled with the same conference mate of the 1 seed, and then that person's going to get the boot, and then the 33rd team will get in. So that's the consequence of that. I'm just letting you know ahead of time of that. But I also think that if you're probably the 32nd team versus the 33rd team, you might not be winning a championship anyway. I don't want to be that person, make assumptions, but I'm just, what I've seen. So,
well, I think there was a thread, real life, probably 6 or 7 years ago, if I remember correctly, where 2 teams played each other 3 games in a row. They had the last game of the regular season, the conference championship, and the first round of the playoffs. And
I think it's possible because your conference championship team comes from the other division, and your last 6 games are in division. It's not possible to play 3 times in a row.
That's the way they had it set up on the message board. So I don't know if that was prior to a last.
Damn people on forums, you trust them. Forums all lie. They're terrible.
Now I know I've had to play a championship game with the team I just played in the regular season, and it just happened to be that other team was one of the 3 from the other the other division within the conference I had to play that year. And matter of fact, I think that was Valdosta. I think it was Nelson and I that had that happen. But again, that's been many, many moons ago. But overall, guys, I think the heat has been turned down, so to speak, on this latest little bit of kerfuffle that popped up. I know I was impacted, and I went, from being ticked off to the realization that, it's just a game, and I knew it, and by God, I shouldn't have done it. But that's what happens. But then again, it's a learning opportunity. It's an improvement opportunity for all parties involved, even the ones that haven't joined Gridiron Dynasty yet. And I look forward to the day when this game is welcomed by many more humans, because the word is out there, and the reputation of the game itself is steady and very much as real as it can be without being too cumbersome or overbearing. But for the most part, we have to realize we're talking about X's and O's, and we're talking about an opportunity to actually have an input with the developers, and I think Bob mentioned it earlier. And in the forums that, what other games do you actually interact with the developers or with the management staff of a particular game? I can't tell you that I've ever spoken to the folks at EA about Madden, or the guys at Wolverine Sports or Gray Dog or whatever. I mean, this is the only platform I can think of where I've actually had interaction with the people that make the decisions and make things happen. And that has become more so with the hiring of Adam and Chris. Like it or not, it is what we have, and it's better than what it was, and it's surely not as good as it's going to be. And that's kind of my philosophy and my viewpoint. And I hope everybody can have the patience necessary to help roll this thing into the future, because I know I'm looking forward to it. And, if this is as bad as it gets, come on. We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice, man. Really, though, if this is as bad as it gets, we really don't have a lot to complain about as users of this game. A lot to be thankful for. Adam, any parting words before we wrap on this session?
Yeah, I have one more apology to issue. When I asked for this emergency meeting, I didn't realize this is only the first round of the draft, and I'm sorry that you guys are a football podcast, and I'm dragging you onto this for the first round of the draft. So I'm sorry. I know that was actually what prompted me to remember that, because I remember that we were hopping on because I was watching the draft picks, and I'm like, man, these are my football guys, and I'm dragging them onto an emergency podcast, and I'm like, man, I really am an asshole sometimes, aren't I? So thank you guys again for hopping on. Last thing is, if you guys need something from me, I do not check my site mail. I don't know how much site mail I get. Just email me. It's on my thing. It's adam.lorenz@sportshubtech.com. I'm always glad to have conversations. I'm sometimes a little slower to respond, but that site mail is black hole. I have so many site mail, and I just am not going to read it. I'm sorry. It's part of the reason why Sable probably just turned it completely off for a while. So I'm trying to help you guys. If you do want to give me ideas or things like that, just email me directly, and I'm glad to look at it and answer it. And, it sometimes takes some time, but, I just wanted to give you guys that heads up. So thank you guys again for having this hopping on tonight and talking to me. Majique, thank you for going off of your schedule to hop on and,
not a problem.
Have this conversation. And then also, Daryl, thank you again for the conversation yesterday. It helped me, see your guys' perspective a little bit more as well. And, we can all move forward and go from here.
And we'll be back on here next week, next Thursday night.
3 weeks in a row.
Have some, I'm telling you, man, it's Christmas. All right, guys. To our guests, thanks so much. And Adam, really appreciate you popping on. And I'm hoping like hell this outro works.